In this video, I'm going to share about the jhanas, a kind of meditation that I believe is very valuable. I like for my clients to understand the jhanas, and so that I can spread the understanding and the practice further and save time within session. This is kind of a body of information that I think is hugely valuable. I'm a hypnotherapist. I specialize in trauma, and it is spiritual work, and this meditation I find unparalleled for developing the body in such a way that it can hold the things that we could work with. I'll make this more clear as we go forward. This meditation was taught to the Buddha, and the Buddha continued to practice and teach it his whole career. He was taught this meditation before his awakening, and he practiced it up until his awakening and for the rest of his life. And he continually exhorted his followers to practice the jhanas. And this really is very much the Buddha's meditation. The Buddha never taught Vipassana as Vipassana is taught today, and he only mentioned the word Vipassana in the Pali Canon about 4 times. And over he would say to people, go to an empty dwelling or the foot of a tree and practice the jhanas. So it's very, very important in Buddhist practice, and the Buddha warned it will be forgotten. In the future, people will try to practice this Buddhist path by simplifying it, and they will take out concentration. And it's important that we don't do that. So here we are, having done that. And now, mindfulness is all the rage, and there's I don't know how many books on Amazon about mindfulness. And the Buddha considered mindfulness to be half of the practice. We want to know what we're doing as we do it, but he called it the wings of awakening. One wing is mindfulness, and the other is concentration. He wanted us to get concentrated and then become mindful of that. He didn't just think it was magically going to be helpful to mindfully be noting all the things. And that's largely what insight meditation has turned into. I don't care to fault, but I do care to spread the understanding of what the Buddha said was most important. Get concentrated and then know what you find there. In particular, know that, this is impermanent. This is not me or mine, and this has a quality of stress to it. These 3 characteristics of reality that he wanted us to get focused on to see. So anyway, the practice itself is a meditation. It's a breath meditation. It's important that it be felt in the full body. To start with, it's a breath meditation where we're feeling our whole body. And if we were to remember one thing, it's how do I become more comfortable? So I'm going to feel the whole body, breathing, and I'm going to allow myself to become more comfortable. And most simply put, this is the practice. The breath felt throughout the body. You can become very concentrated on many things, and that's great, but the practice here, be aware of the whole body. Reason being, as we get concentrated, we want to condition the body to be at ease, to relax. And the more we relax, the more we soften, the more we become present, the more the body can relax, and we can create a body that is conditioned to hold the possibility of awakening. Now, I think important to recognize this does not resolve trauma. It does strengthen some useful skills, and that's why I recommend it. I'll say more about that. It also, it is not when we enter into these profound states, it's not enlightenment, but it is a taste of enlightenment. In other words, we come out of the meditation and there we are again. We shouldn't be looking for incredibly powerful transformative experiences. That would actually be a hindrance, that would get in the way. But we can taste extraordinary states. The jhanas are, in a sense, the exploration of the profoundly beautiful states of awareness. It is, in a sense, how do we go into altered states in meditation. The altered states are extraordinary, and I will describe them. They're not there's other amazing altered states. It's not altered states, but it shows you fundamental things about altered states. So it's very useful, very, very useful, I would say, for those who are experiencing altered states, because we want to understand them. In fact, we want to be able to navigate through them. And this is the most fundamental teaching, I would suggest. There's a lot more to say about that. I'm going to leave it there for now. But the states we are entering is states of absorption. When we get concentrated, we get so focused, we become the flow of our experience. And then what can that flow of experience be? So let me connect to the beginning of the practice, and you can begin practicing as I talk. This is not a long, formal meditation. I'm just going to start showing how you enter and the things that you notice as you progress in the meditation, because it evolves. It's not just one thing we do, it's one thing that we want to be able to navigate. Because as we begin the meditation, we're in a different place. We're not concentrated. We are, I couldn't even call it distracted, it's just there's so many things that are filling our awareness. So when we begin, generally seated or lying down if you are not prone to fall asleep. I like to do it lying down because I like to be completely relaxed. As we do the meditation, we want to move as little as possible, because if we move, it's going to agitate us a little bit. And the whole name of the game is, how do we get concentrated? How do we get as deep as we can? So we begin by taking a few deep breaths might be good, just to really connect with our body. If you are seated, moving side to side to kind of find your center. We're going to want to feel that the whole body is breathing, so we want our awareness to soften to include the whole body. And feel that the whole body is breathing. So we want to feel the in-breath, and then feel the exhalation. And we want to know, I am breathing in a long breath, I'm breathing out a long breath. And as we do this for a little while and get more and more relaxed, we'll notice that the breath becomes shallower because we don't need to breathe so much. The heartbeat slows down, the breathing rate can slow down, and the breath is actually more shallow. And so I know I'm breathing in a shallow breath, and I'm breathing out a shallow breath. Now, this is good. We're already doing the practice, feeling the whole body relaxing. And it may come for you that you can kind of feel like, ooh, I just suddenly dropped into it. Now I feel like I'm actually here, like I've landed, like I'm actually feeling the breath all the way through, pushing out and pulling in, almost like a bellows, pulling air into the lungs and pressing it out. And it's become a contiguous movement that, if we recognize that, we are recognizing that we've dropped into a light trance, and that we are relating to our experience in a new way. And we still know I'm breathing in and out. When we get here, we can start to feel in the whole body that we're breathing in relaxation and breathing out relaxation. All the way through, we want to be aware of our body, and all the way through, we want to be aware of our breath. But its quality will change. Now we can notice my whole body is relaxed and I am concentrated and I am breathing in and out relaxation. As I breathe in relaxation, I relax. And as I breathe out relaxation, I relax. Now I can get more and more comfortable with this and I can play with it. It's very helpful to play with it. It's not a problem if the mind is busy. To view it as a problem would be a problem. The mind will think. We don't want to turn that into a problem. What we do want to do is steer the mind back to the breath and to what we're doing. We want the mind to think about the meditation itself. Like, oh, I know, I'm breathing in. My mind is knowing this breath, breathing in. How relaxed is it? And how relaxed is the exhalation? And we can get curious, we can wonder all sorts of things. Is the inhalation more or less relaxing than the exhalation? Do I feel the relaxation in all the parts of my body? Can I spread it around? When my breath moves through the body, does it waken it up? Is it enlivening, invigorating? Can I be invigorated and relaxed at the same time? All the questions about the breath. When my breath reaches the top, does it pause or does it go straight into the exhalation? Is there a moment of stillness at the top and at the bottom? And the hugely important question is, how can I breathe even more comfortably? Continually, that's in a sense the simplest thing to hold. How can this be even more comfortable? And who knows, we discover. If I think of a smile, do I settle and become even more comfortable? If my eyes are closed, do I become even more comfortable? Is there any tension in my body? And if I find it and my breath moves through it, does it soften and wash away? And this activity of the mind is fine because we're conditioning the body and the mind to, in a sense, fall in love with the breath and discover what's most beautiful, what's most relaxing. Now, we haven't even entered what is called the states of absorption. There are different states. The first jhana through 4. There's 4 primary states of jhanas, and there's a 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, which is like variants of the 4th, and there's a 9th. And this is a whole science of concentration, repeatable with experiments. We're discovering, how do I cause my mind to become very concentrated and cause that concentration to affect and impact my body in such a way that I am more free and more alive in life. So always, how do I become even more comfortable? Now, after I'm very relaxed and comfortable and I feel like the mind's settling down and the mind is just noticing the breath that it comes in with an increased resolution, and everything that wobbles the mind, that causes it to move from our focus of awareness, we wonder why, and can those parts of us relax so that we can gather ourselves again and become even more focused and connected with the breath. And what happens is eventually the mind just becomes the breath, and we become absorbed. The gap between the relaxed breath in ourselves disappear and we become the relaxed breath. And we can notice how pleasurable it is. And then we become the pleasure. The Pali word for this pleasure is called piti. I don't know of a similar word in English, but there begins to be a sense of pleasure. The relaxation in the breath is pleasurable. And when we start to feel that, we want to shift our attention to how pleasurable the breath is. And then we're breathing in the pleasure, and we're breathing out the pleasure. And so we're being not only relaxed, but the breath becomes like a gift. Like it's something that our heart can lean into and enjoy. The meditation becomes beautiful. And we want to protect the beauty here. We don't want to move and scratch our nose so much, even though it may be irritating not to. If we move, the pleasure will be further away. And we'll have to calm again and get more and more focused to invite the pleasure to be here. And the pleasure can get so, as we focus on it and we see it with more clarity, we feel it more directly, again, in the breath, in the whole body. It gets, in our mind's eye, it becomes bigger. I mean, we're just focusing on it, but more and more we're seeing it, and it appears bigger. And there comes an inflection point where the pleasure, which is growing, can just become everything. That's the state of absorption, when just the pleasure is everywhere. And there's nothing but pleasure. And this is why it's called boundless. And I encourage you to enjoy it and don't fear it. It can be startling when the pleasure gets big. Like, let yourself have all of it. You will need to train yourself to allow yourself to have this much pleasure. It won't make sense to the mind. And all of the ideas we have in the mind will get in the way. The idea that we've always had that we'll get pleasure when we get the thing that we want. It's like, but no, it's just here, and in fact it's boundless. The pleasure is not caused by anything. It's not been triggered. It's actually just coming out of the moment because we're seeing it and we're inviting it, breathing into it, and it's manifesting. We're like this pleasure. And when we find it, we want to spread it around the body. And we want to enjoy it. And let it be big. In fact, the breath can increase at this point. The breath can even be rapturous. It can be like the breath is everything we've ever wanted. And we can breathe very deeply and feel cleansed and fulfilled by it. And it's very healthy to do so. The Buddha said over and over again, do not fear the pleasure that comes from the breath. The reason being, as the breathing itself feels comfortable, and we feel nourished by it, and sensitive to it, and invigorated and enlivened, and our heart opens, and there's love and joy for the breath, it conditions us to have a new relationship with the breath, to see it and feel it in a new way. In fact, it conditions us so that we can be walking down the street, not even meditating. And the beautiful breath is just making us happy because we've trained ourselves to be satisfied by the boundlessness of the breath. Now, in the practicing of the jhanas, this is the first jhana, when we lose ourselves in the pleasure of the breath, and the pleasure becomes boundless. Well, we want to stretch this out, have this experience, as if it doesn't mean anything. Don't get hung up on it. Unfortunately, if you think you've attained something, that will create a barrier to attaining it in the future. It's natural to cling to this, to pat on the back, but all of this will get in the way. We want to hold it lightly, like it's no big deal. Oh, this is what it's like for the pleasure to be boundless. Also, don't get hung up on is it boundless or not. A lot of people in the beginning are like, was it boundless or not? And they think, I think it probably was, and that's great. But then later on they realize, not like this, like I'm much more in it now. Like we develop the skill to give ourselves to the pleasure of the breath. It has an effect on us that it makes it easier to let go of other things. Why do I need candy? Why do I need a drink? Why do I need these things? Why do I need all of the things that I want if in fact I'm already satisfied just by breathing? This is why the Buddha said it's so important. You know, if attachment causes desire, well, how are we going to give up the attachment? If giving up attachment is a slap on the back of the hand, we're not going to want to do that. We're not going to end up giving up all those things. It's going to be a struggle to give up what we want. But when we become conditioned to realize what we truly want is already here, then it becomes very easy. So we're in the first jhana, which is quite an extraordinary thing. Some people experience it without realizing they've experienced it. Some people enter into states of absorption accidentally at various times of their life. Oftentimes when people take spiritual medicines, they might have this experience, and then they might think, wow, I was really high, I had this weird experience. But to find out that it's actually very natural and healthy, it's actually a taste of the freedom that is possible, we start to realize that that's actually a window into something that's more real than what we think is real life. So as we're in this first jhana and breathing rapturously and loving the experience, really giving it to ourselves and really spreading it around the body, training our mind in a good way. After a while, we can notice, like, this is beautiful. It's boundlessly pleasurable. The first jhana is largely about pleasure, the realm of unbounded pleasure. And after a while, we may notice that it's paradoxical because it's getting old, but it's still boundlessly pleasurable. Like there's still nothing at all limiting of this pleasure. It's just it's kind of getting old. Another way to notice it is it's getting tiring. It takes effort to have this joy, to gather the pleasure that comes in this breath that is having an effect on my spirit and my soul. But it's taking. I notice it's almost like I'm working to be pleasurable. And when we notice that, we are ripe for relaxing the breath a little bit, calming the breath down just a little bit, following our one guidance of how do I make this even more comfortable? Well, I can relax even further. And the pleasure transforms into happiness. The breath calms down a little bit, and the pleasure becomes an unbounded happiness. Like I'm really as happy as I want to be, and there's always more happiness right in this moment. The more closely I look at the happiness itself, the more layered it is. It's just happiness inside of happiness. And there's nothing else. It's just happiness. In fact, everything is happy. I look at the world and the world seems to be happy. Now, this is absorption. It means I'm single-focused on the happiness. Like all of me is all about the happiness. But let me explain how this works in the mind so that your mind can relax even more. The mind can still have thoughts. The mind still will have thoughts. It's just that they're not as beautiful as the happiness. We're not going to be distracted because there's the happiness, and we can put all of our mind into the happiness, in which case, like, wow, it's just glorious. beautiful happiness. But the mind still thinks. We don't want to go there because that dilutes the happiness. So it creates this feedback loop where our awareness keeps feeding into the happiness. But don't let a passing thought make you think you're not having the experience, right? So after a while, here in the second jhana, we may find that, the happiness is kind of getting old. It's weird. It doesn't make sense to the mind. I always thought that all I wanted was happiness. I just want to be happy. And here I have happiness, and I just don't really, I don't need more. I'm good right now. In fact, I'd like to calm the breath even further and drop into a deeper and more concentrated state, more further removed from the concerns of the world. And here, in what's called the third jhana, is the realm of unbounded contentment. And here it's just like there's just a boundless sense of goodness. Like in a quiet way, everything is just good. It's easier than happiness. In a certain sense, it's better, but it's really not better. It's just more refined, more subtle. We are more completely at ease. And now it's really funny to think that this could get old. Hard to imagine. How could I get tired of the goodness of reality? Isn't it nice to hang out in this place where just everything feels good? You can imagine it now. And we want to cultivate this. We want to come to know, to question our assumptions. We have all sorts of thoughts that reality is not good, and we can find that in the breath alone, just good. And we can also notice that there's a slight bit of stress and tension in the process here of maintaining this goodness. We're actually doing it. Somehow it's me doing it. I'm just wondering, how can the breath be even more comfortable? And the way to make it even more comfortable is to calm the breath further and just as if drop through the goodness. It dissolves. And we enter into a deeper state. The realm of unbounded equanimity, where we start to realize that good or bad does not even apply here. In fact, the part of the mind that might judge ceases to judge entirely. And we just are, and everything is what it is. It's important for the practice that we still are feeling the breath moving through the body and washing away all of the attachments. It's still a practice, but in this realm of unbounded equanimity, there's no qualities inherent to anything. Reality just is what it is. And in fact, we know clearly that, all of that good, bad, I added that to the things. I decided that this person was more or less good. I created those circumstances into what I called a problem. That it's the nature of my mind to judge. And it's a part of the mind that I can, and in this moment, have, I'd say transcended, but it's more like we dropped down through it, descended, to get down to this ground of being where nothing actually seems to matter. we're free. It's like there's nothing but freedom in the breath. Now there are 4 or 5 more flavors of jhanas, but all of them also have this level of breath or quieter. The breath kind of does go away almost completely, and we do get more and more concentrated, but they're all similarly equanimous. We can go a whole lot deeper now that we've let go of all the toil. And so this equanimity is, related to the Buddhist teachings about freedom. It's a taste of how we can be free. And we can allow the body to begin to get comfortable with this level of freedom. Now, this is the practice. We could just end our meditation and go about our day. We can just step straight out of the 4th jhana into what would I like to do? Have some new experience. It can also be very helpful to move around between the different jhanas. That's an advanced practice. But I'm thinking here in my resonance with the realm of unbounded equanimity that it actually behoove me in this sharing to have a more pleasure and more movement. Remember the goodness and the happiness and the pleasure. These are nice to have. In fact, I don't need to be so concentrated. I'm popping up through the levels. It's actually quite easy to do. It's nice to remember that all of this is easy and effortless and no big deal. Again, I thought it was a big deal. It gets in the way. We don't need to have those thoughts. It's a wonderful practice. Let me see if I can share something about why and how it's wonderful. It's really nice. It's a lot of paradox here. It's really nice to be able to create for ourselves a beautiful experience on a moment's notice. It takes time to develop, to drop into the depths, but more and more we can just jump to where we've been before. So it's really nice to be able to jump into a very focused place. In a sense, we can set ourselves little triggers so that we land back here on a moment's notice. An expert at the jhanas can go into a jhana in a single breath. Just the pleasure displays itself. And whatever we were working about, here's the paradox there, we don't really want to push that away. Right? It's not like we always want to be in jhanas. It's just something that's a very good practice for giving us the feeling that we have some say in our experience. But it's not that we always should have say in our experience. In the same way, I don't believe that we should always try to be mindful. Mindfulness is a wonderful thing, but in the context of a life that is a beautiful one. I will say, and I haven't heard many people say this, but I think it's very clear to me, resolving our trauma has a much more wonderful effect on our life than increasing our mindfulness. And I'd go further to say increasing our mindfulness while not addressing our trauma will create problems. So I encourage the development of jhanas because it teaches us a level of freedom. And it shows us what's possible. In fact, it's possible to meet traumas with this developed comfort and relaxation and precision. The Buddha called it the wings of awakening because there's mindfulness and concentration, and they work together. So it's not that we should be concentrated or that we should be mindful, but if we can be mindful and concentrated, we can begin to notice things, powerful transformative things. These meditations, I will mention, are incredibly useful for those who are going into altered states. Because if we find ourselves in an altered state, it's really good to have these skills to extend it, to inhabit it, to not fall out of it because of fears, for instance. It's also very useful to be able to deepen. If we have a really beautiful experience, if we can soften into it, we can drop through layers and see more about that given blessing. This kind of meditation is most useful to practice on a long retreat. If you have 3 days or 10 days, even a month, you can really, that's when you tend to get to the deepest levels of concentrations. Right? And so really we want our lives to become more peaceful, so that our meditations are less disturbed, so that we can go deeper. It's like we want to give up our addiction, so we stop grasping for pleasures, so that we stop thinking of that grasping in our meditation, so that we can let go and go even deeper. So we start to see that the strength of our meditation isn't just in that moment, it's everything that led up to that, all of the trainings, and also the way that we've protected our serenity, cultivated our breath, addressed the circumstances in our life, addressed our traumas. So I hope this lands with you. It's a beautiful practice, one to be held lightly. I'll repeat that the Buddha encouraged us to practice this, and repeatedly said, do not fear the jhanas. We're not going to get attached to the pleasure, or if we do get attached to the pleasure a little bit, we'll work through that next. In other words, it's very useful on the path. Mindfulness, it's not that concentration and mindfulness are different. It's we actually need the mindfulness to become more concentrated. And then when we get more concentrated, we get to be mindful of this. Like, oh, mindful of goodness, mindful of happiness, mindful of pleasure, mindful of equanimity. I hope you find this valuable, and I'm wishing for you happy journeys.